comes to mind when you hear the names of these Richmond neighborhoods? Fairfield Court, Whitcomb Court, Gilpin Court. They are a few of Richmond's housing projects. Some people call it home. For others, they call to mind images of crime and poverty. Tonight in this special report, Lorenzo Hall introduces us to a Richmond woman who says she wasn't afraid of crime in Gilpin Court. She was afraid of moving out.
Reluctantly, Tanya Hawker and her 4 children called this Gilpin Court apartment their home.
When I found myself in a situation where I thought I was going to be homeless for a period of time, I went over and applied.
As a child, Hawker grew up just a few blocks away from Gilpin Court and was actually told never to step in this area by her parents. So Hawker found it ironic she would soon raise her own children in an area once off limits.
I know my children, they deserve better.
Hawker told herself it would be a short stay.
Public housing, I thought, was, designed to be a temporary thing.
Instead, it turned into 14 years.
Living somewhere where you only had to pay $50 or $60 rent, you didn't have to worry about utilities and things like that. It makes it easy, to keep yourself in a situation. 1
out of every 10 Richmond families is finding themselves in similar situations. Stuck in public housing for at least 10 years. And nearly all are like Hawker, black single moms with little money.
It's really a paradox to see so much poverty.
VCU Urban Studies professor Dr. Michaela Zonta says money continues to be the biggest factor for staying longer, but so is comfort.
Even though the quality of housing is poor, they are able somehow to create their social network. I mean, that's their neighborhood.
Dr. Zonta says people living in public housing often live fairly comfortable lives despite the violence in their neighborhoods. Just how violent? Between October of 2009 and February of this year, Richmond's 6 public housing developments saw nearly 250 arrests. Hawker ignored the crime for years until she finally realized gunshots became the norm for her children.
Well, I'm like, wait a minute. That didn't even faze them to hear the cop car go by or the gunshot go off. And I was like, I think it's, time for us to go.
Leaving wasn't easy. While she had neighbors to help with day-to-day tasks like childcare, there was never anyone around to encourage her to leave public housing. Hawker then took initiative by saving up, cutting back, and using her tax refund to finally make the move.
I didn't have anybody to sit down with me and like, Tanya, okay, you need X amount of dollars for this.
What we've seen is that the connections between a lot of the services out there is often scattered.
Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority CEO Anthony Scott admits support programs to get residents out of public housing haven't been insufficient.
Funding is no longer there. Those dollars have either dried up or cut back significantly. So we're looking, as everyone is these days, right? We're looking at making smarter connections and stronger partnerships with people that are providing this kinds of activity and services.
Scott says Richmond's public housing only gets funding from the federal government, along with minimal rent paid by tenants, totaling just $65 million in 2009.
It's a little small, but we make do.
Hawker now lives in the fan and says each day is still a struggle. Her utilities were disconnected a few times. Rent is now close to $700 a month, and her oldest daughter starts college this fall, but she never regrets moving.
I had to break the circle because if I didn't, one of the 4 children probably would have wound up living in Gilpin Court.
In Richmond, Lorenzo Hall, CBS 6 News.
Tenants can stay in public housing as long as needed if they continue to meet the income requirement. Right now, more than 2,000 people are on the waiting list for public housing in Richmond. Do you want to hear more of Tanya's story, how she got out, and what it was like when she first moved in? Visit WTVR.com/special report. We've posted additional excerpts from her interview along with this report, and there's a place for you to leave your comments.